In today's video, a heated exchange between Tom Homan and MSNBC goes viral. Secondly, the federal government has announced federal charges for the criminal who stabbed the woman in the neck. Finally, CNN is caught sympathizing for this exact criminal. In these stories, we'll show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
There are cases across the country where people who are paying taxes, who have licenses, who are in the process of trying to get legal papers, are they criminals? Especially those who have kids who have served in the U.S. military. And no, they're not a public safety hazard.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
Yes, sir.
I don't know the facts of that case. I don't know what you're talking about. I have to look at the facts of the case. However, I will say this. If they're in the country illegally, that is not okay. And people think illegal immigration is a victimless crime, and it's not. I don't know the case. I don't know the public safety threat. But I will say this. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing the background investigation, paying the fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. And the people who are doing things the right way are sitting on the back seat while we had millions of people come across the border in the Biden administration and cheated the system. People can call them asylum seekers all they want, but if you look at immigration court data, nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border under Biden end up with an order of removal because they don't qualify for asylum. They're pushing themselves to the front of the line, and there are thousands of people in the world who actually are escaping fear and persecution from their homeland. They're sitting in the back seat while people violated laws, disrespected this nation. If you want to be a part of the greatest nation on earth, there's a right way and wrong way to do it. So if you're in the country illegally, you may not be a priority because we prioritize public safety threats and national security threats, but it's not okay to be in this country illegally.
Okay, let's just understand exactly what's going on here. Tom Homan went on to Morning Joe this morning, and it was like a 15-minute interview. And for majority of the interview, he had to explain to Mika in great detail what the immigration law is, meaning when someone crosses the border illegally, they are subject to deportation. Bottom line. There is no other, what about this or what about that? The only other scenario where that is not the case is if they get an approved asylum claim from an immigration judge. If that's not the case, they're subject to deportation. It doesn't matter if they crossed the border 30 years ago, yesterday, 2 months ago, during the election, they are in the country illegally and they're subject to deportation. But I'll read it to you guys because I know you're going to have people disagree with you. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, Sections 212A and 237A, people who are in the U.S. without being lawfully admitted or who overstay their visas are deportable and removable by law.
Is it fair to say that if someone is in the process of trying to get their paperwork straight and they have kids who have served in the U.S. military and they're paying taxes and they have a license, is it fair to say that that person is not a threat to society and not a criminal?
Do they have a criminal history? Have you seen the intelligence? Do you have
I'm just asking, do you consider someone who is trying to get their papers now, struggling, and has kids who serve in the military, has a license and pay taxes, is that in your mind a criminal? Is that someone you want your ICE agents to take off the street?
I just explained the real data that I see every day, that a mass 70% are criminals, public safety threats, and the rest are national security threats. People with final orders. I don't know who this case, do they have a final order? Have you seen the background investigation or the investigation that was built upon by the ICE agent, what's involved in that case? Things that you may not know. So unless I know the specifics of that case and I have the file in front of me, I can't make that determination if they're a threat or not.
I would like to see that data that you're talking about, the 70%, the criminal history. I'd love some transparency as to why a lot of these people have been disappeared. You say you have data. We would love to see it. The American people should see this data.
I mean, it's crazy, I'm telling you. Now, please, if you guys have been getting value from our channel, particularly this video, like, share, and subscribe. If you do want to support us further, all you have to do is go to the links in the description below. You can shop our merch store. We have new designs that we release every single week. I think you'll find something that you'll love. or you could just buy me a cup of coffee. The problem why they're never going to agree is because Democrats inherently believe that it doesn't matter if a person crossed the border illegally 30 years ago or yesterday. They're not a criminal, and they should not be subject to deportation. And the only time Democrats are even interested, slightly interested, by the way, in regards to deporting people is if they committed the most egregious crime, which would be murder. Now, what I find to be interesting, if that's the way they feel, why didn't they change the law to take care of the people that they're clearly defending, that have been in the country for 30 years unlawfully? Why didn't they make a law for those people? Because that's my only question here. They still have yet to introduce a law, by the way, just so you guys understand. And then they make it more complicated, which is why I want you to answer this question in the comments section below. If a father who crossed the border illegally 30 years ago has 3 sons that served in the United States Marine Corps, he's been paying his taxes, he never got his papers in order, should he be deported? Yes or no? Let me know what your thoughts are about that in the comments section. Now, this argument continues. Take a look.
Give ICE access to the jail to arrest a bad guy in the jail rather than have to go in the community to find them. Because when you go in the community and find them, it puts ICE officers at greater risk. It puts the community at greater risk. It puts the alien at greater risk because anything can happen on a street arrest. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to prioritize public safety threats. When you got governors and mayors who are releasing these public safety threats every day into the community, that causes the crime rate, and we've seen some terrible incidents in the last few days where innocent victims are murdered. This past year, I've seen innocent Americans raped and murdered by people who are not supposed to be here. So rather than going back and forth and say, well, ICE has got a car parked near a church, that is ridiculous. You're out there looking for people like this, exactly what they're doing.
Well, I would argue that actually that the ICE vehicle parked outside a Spanish mass is a frightening sight, given what has happened in this country. I also, with respect, sir, thank you for the information that you have shared on this show, but we would appreciate all of the information. All of it, all of the data that you say you have.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people,
well,
is
that's
disgusting.
What's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador.
U.S. citizens get arrested every day. U.S. citizens get arrested by police every day. Are they being disappeared?
Okay, now this is a serious point I want to make really briefly here. If you've been using credit cards to pay for your groceries, your gas, and your bills, and you're also eating that brutal interest rate, you got to pay attention, because there's no reason why you should keep paying 20% or more to the credit card companies. That's why I encourage you to contact my friends at American Financing. They're helping people just like you save an average of $800 a month by doing what? Taking the equity in your home and helping pay off high interest debt. And here's the great part about it all. There are no upfront fees, no obligation, just a 10-minute call to a salary-based mortgage consultant. And if you start today, you could delay up to 2 mortgage payments, putting even more cash in your hands right now. So don't wait. Call American Financing at 866-890-8434. That's 866-890-8434, or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Devori.
Oh, wow. Of course they're not being disappeared, Tom Homan, but, you know, Democrats, they have to be dramatic about this entire situation. And the reason why they do it is because it's politically in their best interest to do so, because it's their way of persuading their base to believe in what they're doing. And what they're doing really is putting American lives at risk. And it's fascinating how one side says that, and so does the other side. But the difference is only one side has the facts to prove it. When you allow sanctuary city policies to exist, that means the worst of the worst will slip through the cracks. Because even when they are arrested finally for committing a crime in a sanctuary city, they are released back into the streets. All right, next story. President Trump has released a special video regarding the Ukrainian refugee who was stabbed in the neck in North Carolina on a train. And what's interesting is CNN's reaction to this, which is really disgusting. I thought I'd seen it, but there is more to it, and I'm going to show it to you. But let's first watch what the president just released earlier this morning.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people. really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. And here's a picture of it. This is the picture of it. And this is a picture of the woman, a beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors.
Yeah, so we've already talked about that fact ad nauseum. We know who is running these cities that are ridden with crime, and it's Democrats, of course. But that's not really the story here, okay? The story is that Charlie Kirk made a comment on social media to the lines of, hey, you know, if this was the other way around, as far as skin color is concerned, you know, there would be rioting in the streets. Now, I'm actually in agreement with him on that because we've seen it, okay? And the fact of the matter is that it's the way our society is conditioned through the repetition of propaganda. It's just the fact of the matter, including social media algorithms that train people to be so sensitive to these issues. There's no question about that. But Van Jones did not like that comment from Charlie Kirk, and he makes it more about what Charlie Kirk had to say instead of the real issue. Take a listen.
You know, let me just say a couple of things. One is, I mean, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare. If you're in any public space, subway, whatever, that something bad is going to happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering, it's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out? It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who were hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him.
Well, of course, Charlie Kirk did fire back at Van Jones, and he told him point blank, I'm not ashamed, but you should be, because you're part of the media cabal that tried to silence this story because it exposes the gross incompetence of Democrats' so-called criminal justice reform. You and other talking heads on TV are complicit in the revolving door that lets these violent criminals roam our streets to maim and murder. Listen, one thing is for sure, and it's something I totally disagree with Van Jones on, is this guy was hurt. We should figure out why he was hurt. No, we don't need to figure out right now why he was hurt. We need to figure out, why is the North Carolina Police Department or justice system releasing someone back into the streets 14 times? That's what we need to figure out, because that's the root cause of this. Okay, if the guy was actually held accountable and thrown in jail like he should have been, then he probably wouldn't have been on that train. I mean, I don't understand why that doesn't make sense for people, okay? Now, there is a mental health component that we need to address in this country, no question about it. But in this particular case, with the guy stabbing people in the neck and he had been arrested 14 times, we're past mental health issues. We're talking about the justice system. Why is he not in prison?
Well, first of all, as you aptly noted that in the video, it's pretty clear that the attacker said, quote, "that white girl." Secondly, Van Jones, he puts race in almost every situation where it doesn't exist. For example, with the death of George Floyd, Van Jones repeatedly said that it was a racist attack. You know who didn't say that? Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General of Minnesota at the time, said that race did not play any role in the actions that happened with George Floyd's death. But even beyond that, and I think this is what's very important, is that we are living in a mental model and a framing post-2020. The 2020 model is that the worst thing that could possibly happen is racial attacks. Remember, even before that, Jussie Smollett or the FBI being mobilized for even the slightest whisper of a hate crime. But now, all of a sudden, when we make the left live up to their own standard of rules, there is complete silence by the entire American media. And then Van Jones goes on television and calls me a race hustler for even calling out the facts and the specifics around this case.
See, we talked about this yesterday. Mainstream media is upset that they have to talk about a story that they did not want to talk about, because this usually is not the type of story that they would run. It doesn't fit the whole narrative, okay? And then when President Trump gets a hold of it and he amplifies it, now they're really upset. And then when you throw on top of Van Jones's response, where he clearly is being sympathetic towards that criminal, now they've lost it, okay? And it's just really a sad thing to see, especially from people who say they care about the American people's safety.
Here's the truth that every American must know. Too many innocent people across the country continue to pay the price of the failed experiment known as cashless bail that has been championed by the Democrat Party for years. All the way back in 2020, North Carolina's then Democrat Governor Roy Cooper established a so-called task force for racial equity in criminal justice. Sounds nice, but it's not. That task force was co-authored by then Attorney General and current Democrat Governor Josh Stein. It recommended, quote, reimagining public safety to, quote, promote diversion and other alternatives to arrest. It also advised to de-emphasize some felony crimes, prioritize, quote, restorative justice, and eliminate cash bail. Democrats in North Carolina and nationwide are consumed with pushing a woke, soft-on-crime agenda, no matter how many innocent Americans suffer as a result.
Yeah, you see, two things could be true at the same time, okay? And it's all right to admit that, which is one, someone like that gentleman should definitely be in prison after the third time he was arrested, okay? And it's also true that whatever his mindset is, his mental state, we have to find better ways to obviously help these individuals. I think that's a fair statement to make, but you can't help them if you don't hold them accountable. And that's the part that people are missing, especially on the left. Did you hear how sympathetic CNN was towards this criminal? It's fascinating. Now, just so you understand how bad of a guy this gentleman was, and I know I'm saying gentleman because I'm just being polite, watch this.
I wanted to show you DeCarlos Brown's record under North Carolina Attorney General Stein. 2021, he was on parole. 2022, was arrested, assault on a female, and injury to property. 2024, arrested twice for misusing 911. And there's just I think the graphic of all of his mugshots is very powerful. There was also this passed in North Carolina, a task force for racial equity in criminal justice. This was on a statewide level to address racial inequities, propose reforms, increase accountability in policing and courts. And they had these 4 working groups. This was launched after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's deaths amid national protests. And one of the things I think is interesting about this is that the mom also blamed the system for not keeping her son in jail, and there's no recourse for her.
And that's why, guys, I always say the same thing. Results tell the story. The results of these policies that Democrats continue to aggressively defend, it's not good. The results show that they don't work. Now, here's what the vice president had to say. The big lie the Democrats told about violent crime is that it's systemic, and therefore no one's really responsible. If the system is to blame, then you fund a bunch of nonprofits that don't do anything besides give jobs to underqualified radicals. The reality is that the gross majority of violent crime is committed by a very small group of people, and we should be throwing them in prison. And that's not what's happening.
And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media Many outlets in this room decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer.
Okay, so now we go to Russ Ferguson, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina. He has announced federal charges for this criminal who committed this heinous act against this woman. And I don't care whether he's white, black, I don't care if she's white or black. The fact of the matter is this guy was arrested 14 times. 14 times. What is going on? What's happening is the system has failed.
As a native of Charlotte, I'm so sad to say that our city has gotten to this place. I was born here. I grew up here. I remember when the light rail was built. I remember the development it spurred. I remember the excitement. And to think now that you can't even feel comfortable riding that train hits me deep. The light rail brought this city access to jobs, access to education. People could take the train to college. It really put Charlotte on the map. And this incident has really, really injured that. Now, to Carlos Brown Jr., who we allege stabbed Erna Sarutska, is in state custody on first-degree murder charges. But I'm here today to announce that we're going to supplement those state charges with federal charges. These federal charges will go alongside the murder case in state court, and we hope that they will ensure justice for Erna, for her family, and for the whole Charlotte community.
All right. Now, there was more to his press conference, but bottom line is they're going to hit this guy with the book. You know, all the charges, of course. He's going to go to prison. That's a good thing. But again, we can't forget that he should have already been in prison. And so that is the main question here, okay? It's not what is the skin color. It's not what her skin color was. It's not what the president says. It's a very simple question. Why did the North Carolina justice system allow that criminal to continue to be on the streets after 13 arrests? And they were not all white collar, by the way. There's some violent arrests in there. Why is that? I think that's the best question to ask. In fact, I want to get your answers in the comment section to this entire video below. I mean, what do you think the answer is? Now, I just believe it just happens to do with policy. You know, that's really what it is, but give me your thoughts about it. Also, how do you guys feel about what Van Jones had to say? Clearly, he's sympathetic towards the victim. He says that we should be focusing on who hurt this guy and why he was hurt, because only hurt people hurt people. Let me know your reaction to that. And then finally, what did you think of that heated exchange between Tom Homan and Mika on Morning Joe? I mean, why is it that they need a full-on education of what immigration law is? They should know this already, but they continue to make the argument. And that's why I asked you guys a question. If a person who crossed the border illegally 30 years ago, should they be deported? Yes or no? Just give me all your answers in the comment section below. All right, so in our next video, Gavin Newsom suffered a major loss after the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that gave President Trump a huge win. So if you guys missed out on that video, more stories from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.